Thank you. So, a brief note about the logistics. What I'm going to do is I will launch into my talk. And as Tina said, my talk is going to be on journey of mindfulness. Um, it's a reflection of my own journey as it has unfolded over a number of years, and where I think the journey is going. Um, and then we'll take a break at around 5:15 or so. And then after we come back, I'll lead you all into a guided meditation. It'll be guided meditation on mindfulness of breath. And then we'll end by 6:30. And then of course, after my talk is done, I'll be happy to take questions, and have everyone provide their feedback or share their insights with me. I'll be happy to turn over the mic to all of you one by one. Okay, so journey of mindfulness. What exactly is mindfulness? So I am paraphrasing John Kabat-Zinn's definition, classical definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness is loving awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So it's important to understand that it's loving awareness. We are carrying with us this loving kindness, energy, and awareness around us. And that is what we bring to bear on our chosen object of mindfulness meditation. It's only within the gaze, within the field of this loving awareness, that insights can arise, that we can learn more about ourselves, what triggers us. You see? Um, so we pay attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So we don't judge whatever is arising within us. We just calmly observe this flow of sensations and flow of thoughts and flow of emotions, uh, as we engage in this practice of mindfulness. Now, mindfulness has become very popular in our culture today. It has become a buzzword. And there are a lot of quote unquote secular teachers who teach just bare bones mindfulness, mindfulness practice, mindfulness meditation. But my perspective is very different. I like to teach mindfulness from the context of Buddhism, from the context of Buddhist thought and Buddhist philosophy. Because if you uproot this practice from its old tradition, you are dumbing it down. So even though you might get benefited from the mindfulness practice as it is, you might not get the full benefits. It might not be transformational for you. So in order to get the full benefits, um, oh, I'm sorry, I got a message. Should I join audio? No. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. We talk about mental arising, mental formations. What just happened was there was a technology formation. A message popped up saying that join audio, yes or no. All right. So we dealt with that mindfully. So coming back to my thought about secular versus traditional mindfulness, it is important to understand this practice from the context of Buddhism, Buddhist thought, Buddhist philosophy, because then it becomes very, very powerful. Then it becomes a journey that can lead to transformation and into freedom from all suffering. So, this was the main practice given by Buddha. And at the end of the day, we need to realize that Buddha taught just one and one thing only. He thought about suffering and end of suffering. So we need to keep that in mind because it's very easy to get lost in the details of the practice and the philosophy. It's very easy to get lost in like Eightfold Noble Path, hindrances, and five aggregates, and 10 remembrances, etc. But we need to keep in mind that at the end of the day, All these tools, all these techniques, um, all these aids are given for us to realize the fact that we are suffering and to go on the path where we are able to become free of all suffering. So this is very important to understand. Just keep this point in mind that it's all about suffering and the end of suffering. So for most of us who come upon this practice, when they hear about mindfulness, you know, they get recommended by the friends that tell them that, hey, listen, practice mindfulness, it'll give you a lot of health benefits, you'll achieve peace of mind, etc. When they come up on this mindfulness practice, the first practice is mindfulness of breath. This is like the flagship practice within, that was kind of given by Buddha. Um, Breath is an amazing object for mindfulness practice simply because breath is ever present. When we breathe in, that is what is happening, right? We are breathing in. When we're breathing out, that's exactly what is happening in the present moment. Also, breath is a very portable instrument. It goes with us. Wherever we go, we are with our breath. And we will stay with our breath, till the day we die. So, mindfulness of breath is a very simple practice, but it's not easy because the moment we start to do this practice, mindfulness of breath, breathing in, breathing out, immediately we are bombarded by all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of um, emotions, all kinds of judgments. We become restless. A part of us doesn't want to sit with our eyes closed, focusing on the breath. A part of us wants to jump out and do things, you know. So it is a simple technique, but it's not easy. It takes time to abide in this practice of mindfulness of breath at the very beginning. So the very first insight that someone can get is that they are suffering, you know. So when we start doing this practice, the very first insight we get is, oh my God, I can't even stay focused on my breath because there is so much going on. And that so much, quote unquote, going on happens because we are suffering. We are not contented with what we have. And what we have is something that we don't need. You see, so we are always striving to do something, to create something that will bring us happiness, that will help us become something else. And that process of becoming never ends. So then we come upon this first noble truth. So Buddha gave one of his first teachings was on the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that there is suffering. There is this constant state of dissatisfaction that uh, stays with us all the time, and that is suffering. Because ideally speaking, if we were able to stay with our breath for a long period of time with perfect concentration, right, perfect calm, perfect composure, yeah, that means that we are not suffering. We are not discontented, right? But the fact that we are bombarded from within, nobody is triggering this from the outside. It's all coming from the inside, right? So this insight arises, the first truth of suffering, the first noble truth that there is suffering. And then as we continue our practice, we are then introduced to other forms of mindfulness practice, mindfulness of body scan, mindfulness of feeling tone, right? The signature of any given feeling. So when a feeling arises, it can have one of three signatures. It can be either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So that's the feeling tone that we use for this practice that the Buddha gave for mindfulness practice. So then, when we are introduced to other domains, so to speak, our experience with mindfulness becomes even richer, right? Because with these new domains, it opens up our eyes to other areas of our being that we were not conscious of, at least not um, moment to moment consciousness. So that kind of opens up our practice. And at that time, at somewhere along the line, we get this insight of the second noble truth. And the insight is that this suffering that we have inside of us, it has its own causes and conditions. So it's not random, but there are causes and conditions that make it stay constant in of us, inside of us. So then now this practice becomes more and more interesting. And it's very important to do this practice with a fresh perspective. And in my other talks, I've shared my own experience. So I started doing, I got introduced to mindfulness through Vipassana technique as given out by S.N. Goenka in India. And Vipassana meditation from Goenka's perspective was about body scan. So you do body scan, you know. So when I did the retreat, I had an amazing experience. I had amazing insights. But then when I came back home, when I was doing this body scan exercise, every day, the whole practice became very stale. It was um, the way I would like to describe is that I did the practice for the sake of doing practice. But because my perspective was not fresh, I felt that I had actually wasted my time. Many times I would force myself to sit and do this body scan practice for an hour. So when I sat for the practice, I felt I didn't feel good. But at the end of the practice, I felt worse. And deep inside, I know that something is wrong. I'm not doing this right. Now, everybody's different, so I'm just talking about my experience. Your experience might be radically different. But for me, what I wanted was I wanted diversity in my practice. I wanted change. That time, I did not know what other techniques uh, were available. For me, it was all body scan, body scan, body scan. And after a while, I was not able to sense. Um, I was not able to sense a lot of sensations simply because my mind was so sluggish and my mind was so bored. You know, so it was only when I came across the insight meditation tradition, that I realized that, oh my God, you know, mindfulness is so much bigger than just body scan, you know. And then that gave a new lease of life to my own practice. It gave me a sense of excitement that, wow, there are so many amazing worlds to explore, and domains to explore, you know. So that's what I talk to people, that it's important to have that perspective, fresh perspective in mind. If you are sluggish, if you don't feel like meditating, then go take a nap. you know when you come back, when you are full of energy, then you can do this practice. So quality, at least from my perspective, quality is more important than quantity. And by quantity, I mean the sheer amount of time that you spend in doing this practice. So just want to stop here for a brief moment. Are there any questions on anything I've said so far? Anything that you would like clarity on, or anything that you disagree with me?
Just a reminder for those of you on Zoom, you can raise your virtual hand or your physical hand if there's someone else speaking and you'd like to go next. And for us here in the room, we'll use the handheld mic so that everyone on Zoom can hear us. Okay, I'll leave the mic here.
Okay. Oh, Margaret, yeah, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was just curious, were you completely on your own when you recognized that mindfulness was more expansive, that that your mind, you opened up to that understanding? Were you completely, did that just come to you maybe as a result of having sat so much, and yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you. So that realization didn't come about in an instant.
Uh-huh.
I was reading the literature, I was doing the practices given out by teachers like Joseph Goldstein and stuff. And then it just
Yeah.
occurred to me that, wow, wait a minute, you know, mindfulness is more than body scan. And in specifically, Joseph Goldstein's talk on the Satipatthana Sutta, the four foundations of
Yeah.
mindfulness, you
Yes.
know, so the website Dharma Seed, right, has the entire series of recordings. So when I started to listen to his recording, then I realized that, wow, Satipatthana Sutta is so much bigger, so much
Yeah.
broader, you know,
Yes.
and there are
Yeah.
so many, literally hundreds of techniques that are
Yeah.
given in that discourse that you can use to practice quote unquote mindfulness, you know?
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that because I know there have been times when I felt my practice was feeling mechanical, and that I'm tempted to say it kind of breaks your heart. It's like, wait a second now. Yeah, I know that I can open to much more than this. And so, would you suggest maybe doing something like reading the Satipatthana Sutta?
Yeah, absolutely. You should.
Yes,
In fact,
yes.
yeah. So what Joseph Goldstein did, and again, I highly recommend his book as well. So he gave the series of talks, and then those talks were transcribed into a book called Mindfulness. You
Hmm.
know, so either read the book or listen to his talks. It'll definitely give you a much broader perspective. And yes, you won't feel like you're doing this in a mechanical kind of a manner. You know,
Okay. Yes, thank you.
yeah. And the other insight I had was this these heart-based practice, the practices that cultivate, the Brahma Viharas, the
Yes.
immeasurable
Yes.
kind of a qualities, right? And they also hit me
Hmm.
like a dump
Yeah.
truck, like, wow, wait a minute. If I do this practice, loving kindness, with loving kindness practice, I'm much more at ease, right? Much more at home within myself. And
Yes.
that is a very fertile ground for practicing mindfulness.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
in when I was doing when I was doing body scan on my own, I didn't have that fertile ground. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? In the
Hmm.
background, I was dissatisfied. I was restless. I felt that
Yes.
my life was not going anywhere, and that kind of showed up in my practice. You see,
Oh, yeah,
so
definitely.
it's very important to mix up the practice
Yeah.
with cultivation of loving kindness, compassion, empathic
Hmm.
joy, and equanimity.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Hmm.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you. That was a great question, Margaret.
Hmm.
So with repeated practice, then we realize the second noble truth that there is a cause to all our suffering, you know, and the cause is craving or clinging. We are always clinging to something. We are always craving for present experiences, and we don't want to have aversive experiences, right? So the more we crave or cling, the more we suffer. And I came across this very insightful story somewhere. So it's like an example, an analogy. Let's say there is a knife that is falling, you know, from above, and you place your hand in the path of the knife, right? When the knife is in air, you don't feel any pain. But when the knife pierces the solid surface of our hand, that's when it creates pain. So the more tightly we hold on to our hand, the more we will suffer, the more physical pain we'll have. But if we are able to let go, if we are able to make our hand diffused, in a way, um, if you are able to make a hand very light, then it'll just go through and through. It'll cause minimal pain, right? So that is a very good example of the second noble truth, you know, that craving and clinging leads to suffering. And then the next noble truth is that there is a path, or sorry, just like there is a cause, there is also a way to end this suffering, right? And the way to end the suffering is to let go. Whatever it is that we are holding on to tightly, if we let go, then that itself reduces our suffering. And then very soon we realize that, yes, there is a path, and that path is the Eightfold Noble Path. And all this thing has been described and documented very wonderfully by Buddha, in a number of kind of suttas, right? So the fourth noble truth is that if you follow this path, the Eightfold Noble Path, then that gives you, then you are assured that uh, have a you will have a way to end all suffering. And then those paths, they are basically three domains, right? Shila, Samadhi, Panya. So basically, morality, concentration, and wisdom. So when we talk about morality, right, we're talking about right speech, right action, right livelihood. When we're talking about concentration, we're talking about right effort, right concentration, right mindfulness. And then they lead to wisdom, which is right view and right intention or right thought. You see? So, and so this is where the traditional teachings become so much more powerful, because any system that promises you enlightenment or freedom from suffering has to be based on a bedrock of morality. You know, we cannot just do anything and everything. We cannot just leave a trail of destruction in our way and expect to be enlightened by end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So this whole path is path of what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing, where we are connected with everybody else. And so we cannot have a path of isolation. You see, are, we live in a matrix with other people. And if we want to be quote unquote enlightened, if we want to end suffering, we have to include others also. We cannot do this all by ourselves. You see, so that's why it's very important to learn mindfulness and all other associated principles from the traditional perspective, because secular mindfulness does not give this deep kind of a perspective, right? And in many cases, within secular mindfulness domain, there is no emphasis on morality. So then what happens is you do this practice, you end up strengthening your ego, and then you are working against yourself. The goal of the path is to realize the insubstantial nature of our ego, insubstantial nature of the self, not a fixed or strength or a monolithic kind of a nature of self. So this is a very important point that we need to understand when we are on this path, you know, and and very soon we also realize that the quote unquote three marks of existence, anicca, anatta, dukkha, that everything is impermanent. When we close our eyes, when we focus on the breath is changing all the time, right? No matter what happens, the breath changes. If we do body scan, our bodies are changing all the time. When we look at our perceptions, when looking at our feeling tones, everything is changing all the time. So that is impermanence. I only yesterday I saw this movie, a brilliant movie called Here. It was simply called Here, with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. And it's a story. It's a very unique story. It's a story of a house, and the camera is in the living room of the house. And it's for more than 100 years. It shows people coming and going. It shows generations of people, living in that time, what kind of furniture they had, and then they move out, and another generation comes in. They come in with their own way of decorating the room, etc. Right? And and so we see Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. They come in like in the 1940s, right? And then they live till contemporary time. And so when you see the living room, there's a window, and you can see outside the window, and then you see, you know, depending on the era that you were, you'll see that kind of cards, that kind of um, surrounding colors and stuff. And then finally, anyway, I won't tell you how the story ends, but it's a beautiful depiction of anicca, that everything is changing, that generations come, they die, and they give way to the next generation, and so on and so forth, right? So what stays in this movie, what stays constant is the house and that living room, but the people keep changing. So it was a beautiful meditation on impermanence, the entire movie, So I highly recommend that you get a chance, check it out. And then, so with these three marks of existence, anicca, anatta, dukkha, anicca is very easy to understand, that everything is changing. Dukkha is also easy to understand, that we are all suffering, right? But when it comes to anatta, that's where there can be some kind of confusion, right? But it need not be that way. So basically, Buddha gave out five aggregates. He said that when we talk about ourselves, we are talking about these specific five aggregates. And then he went on to prove that none of these aggregates are the self, because those aggregates themselves are changing. So the first aggregate was the form, the physical body, right? The four elements. So everything that is kind of physical matter, for example, right? Even though it seems solid, in reality, it is not that solid. It's changing all the time, and eventually it will disintegrate and it will die. The second is the feeling tone, the signature of any emotion, whether it's present, unpleasant, or neutral. The feeling tones are also changing depending on the feeling that we're experiencing at any given point in time. Then the third is perception, how we label things, right? When we experience, if we hear sitting in a room and if we hear a fire truck, if we hear the sound, we immediately know that, oh, there's a fire truck. There must be a fire in the neighborhood. So that is perception, right? Then the fourth one is volitional formation, or sankhara. So volitional formations are identifications and labels that we give to the first three aggregates, the form, feeling, tone, and perception. And then the fifth one is consciousness. It is the field of awareness in which all these four aggregates arise. So Buddha proved that each one of these aggregates is not self, because the aggregates themselves are changing depending on the conditions around it. And when these things change, there is no central self involved. There is no central person behind the scenes that is directing these activities. It's all happening of its own accord. You know, so this also is a great insight on one's journey into this mindfulness practice, into this mindfulness path. So you start with mindfulness of breath, breathing in, breathing out. You realize that it's difficult because there's so much going on in our mind, so much going on in our hearts, and then you realize that this is suffering. So that's like the first noble truth. Then you go on to the second noble truth, um, and then you open up your practice. You include the other aspects of the practice, and then you cultivate your heart-centered emotions. The four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. That sustains your practice, and then you come to this eightfold noble path that gives you a strategy and a blueprint for living our lives that create less suffering in the first place. Because as you go in this journey of reducing your suffering, most of us have a lot of suffering from the past that we are dealing with, right? It's important not to generate suffering for us in the future, right? So this eightfold noble path gives a strategy for us to live our lives so that we cultivate, or rather we uh, attract less suffering, you know so and then this eightfold noble path, when we come to this right concentration, right wisdom, that's when we realize that yes, this is the end state, the state where we don't generate any suffering. This is the state where we are happy, contented, and full of joy. And that's what kind of sustains the practice. Now, In theory, okay, in theory. In practice, it's a little difficult because we have all kinds of challenges, right? We have challenges in our practice. For me, I mean, I'm guilty as charged. There are so many days um, when my work schedule gets out of control. I have early morning meetings and late evening meetings, so it's difficult for me to squeeze in time to do meditation, you know. Um, so I have to live with it, you know. This is part of a flow. I can't say that, hey, I'm going to stop my work because I want to meditate. You know, that's not a very practical kind of a solution. So we all have these challenges. And the other challenge is that, you know, when we sit, sometimes our bodies don't agree. You know, we experience sloth, we experience, you know, tiredness, laziness, and the moment we close our eyes, we fall asleep. So, you know, sleepiness is an occupational hazard when you're doing mindfulness practice, you know, and you have to kind of just accept it as it is. And then see how you can cultivate different habits so that you can sustain your practice. So this is also part of right effort. You have to make effort. You have to make a conscious effort to make sure that you are in the right state of mind, that you can do your daily practice. And the other thing that you can do, I mean, that you are all doing right now is you're part of a sangha, right? We sometimes get inspired by teachers. We get inspired by our fellow peers. When we talk to them, we get inspired by listening to talks, Dhamma talks by teachers, you know. So that's also an effective way to deal with practice challenges. And then the last thing is retreats, right? Going on long retreats that can definitely um, uh, help us go deeper into the practice and give us the motivation to continue to do so, right? Because it is possible, and I know some people that they tried mindfulness, you know, and after a while they gave up because they thought that it didn't work for them. But the reality is that it didn't working it's not that it didn't work for them, it's like they didn't make the right effort to do this practice. And then one one way to sustain our practice is to somehow integrate it with our day-to-day activities. You know, this is where Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, he talks about so many different ways, like washing the dishes, for example, right? You can set time aside, let's say 10 minutes, set an intention that be you're going to practice mindfulness when you're washing the dishes. And so the washing the dishes becomes like an act of meditation where you can feel the sensations of the warm water, you feel the sensations of the soap, you feel sensations of the dishes that you're washing, and then you end up enjoying it. You know, so any mundane task that you have to do in your day-to-day life can be enhanced with deliberate and conscious mindfulness practice. And the more you're able to integrate, and actually that's the goal of the practice, right? To somehow have a part of your attention, maybe like 15 to 20% of your attention on your own body and your own breath, even when you are engaged with the world outside. So you have your eyes wide open, you're doing all the activities that need to be done in the world outside, and yet a part of you is centered inside of yourself. You know, and if you are able to achieve that level of concentration and skill in your practice, then you're all set. You know, then you're all set, because now you're able to do this practice. You are able to convert any situation in your life and turn that into a mindfulness practice. And then, of course, when you do have time, you know, you are able to easily set, you know, take out your cushion, sit, and do your formal practice. So of that's the goal, where we first do this practice consciously, and then after a while it becomes second nature. So in that case, we don't really have to try; it just happens of its own accord. You know, for I guess for some people it happens quickly. For others, it takes a long time. For me, it has taken a long time, and it's not consistent. You know, there are times when I find myself being mindful, even when I'm engaged in the world outside, but there are times when I'm not. I just get carried away with the emotions and the energies of day-to-day practice. So one metaphor that comes up for this entire journey of mindfulness is for me, disentangle and be free. You know, so the more we are tangled with the activities outside, the more we are tangled with the world inside of us, the more imprisoned we are. And the more we are able to disentangle, the more free we become. So one example, one aspect of this practice is, I was talking about the three marks of existence. When we find ourselves in the grip of very difficult, challenging emotion, if we are able to keep in mind the three marks of existence, anicca, anatta, dukkha, it gives us space to disentangle, even if it's for a brief moment. But that brief moment is very, very significant because we are able to come out of its grip, you know. And then, of course, the other way is to, even in the grip of the emotion, if you're able to focus on your breath, if you're able to focus on our breath, it means that part of our attention now is centered and grounded in the breath, and that energy is not caught up in that kind of emotion, right? So there are a number of ways in which we can disentangle ourselves and stay on this path. And after a while, this whole process of disentanglement itself becomes a second nature. And then it's very easy to just kind of flow in the path, So again, it's an amazing practice. It really leads to an end of all suffering. And when we are able to sustain our practice, when we are able to keep our perspectives fresh, we will get these flashes of insight. And that those flashes of insight will prove to us that we are on the right path, that what we are doing is right for us. And it's very important to understand, to appreciate and give ourselves credit that we are on this path. It's an amazing path where we are seeking end of suffering, end of all suffering, not just within ourselves, but for all of us, for people around us. We are able to leverage a lot of negative um, experiences, using them as stepping stones to stay grounded and to stay present. Now, when you survey, the vast um, reach and depth of Buddhist practice, you have so many different branches, right? Like you have Mahayana, you have Vajrayana, you have Theravada tradition. There are amazing practices that we can borrow from all these traditions to sustain our practice. So even though for me, my bulk of my practice has been in Theravada tradition, under the lineage of Ajahn Chah, I freely borrow from Tibetan Buddhist tradition, So in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is this there's this theory of Lojong. Those are like slogans that were kind of given by Atisha in 7th century. Um, so those slogans are very, very profound, and those slogans act as reminders for us to stay on this path. So, so one of the slogans, they talk about mishaps. I forget the exact slogan, but you using that slogan, you are utilizing any unpleasant experience to wake up, to to wake up to the present moment. And if we remember this slogan often, then the moment we are in the grip of this unpleasant situation, we are immediately prompted to wake up, so to speak, and be aware and be centered where we are. So there are literally, thousands of techniques that you can use, to sustain your practice from different traditions, and they all work in the service of your wisdom and your liberation. So that's all I had for my talk. Are there any questions? Okay, all right. How about we take a break and then we come back and then we'll do guided meditation? Is that okay? We'll take so it's 5:70. How about we take a break till 5:30? Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you all. So we will do mindfulness of meditation, but I just want to kind of orient you to this practice before I begin. So it is a very simple practice, focusing on the breath, breathing in, breathing out, but it's not easy, simply because of all the stuff that comes up within us when we do this practice. But I want to point out the importance of this practice. When we attempt to pay attention on our breath, when we find that our mind is off, distracted towards an object, that moment is moment of mindfulness. That's when you realize that, oh, my attention should be on my breath. And then when you take it back to your breath. Now, when you do this multiple times, you're actually increasing your hour of concentration, your skill of concentration, especially when doing this very gently, back and forth. Also, when something arises within us and we are able to just observe and let go, we are cultivating our innate power of equanimity. See, we are training ourselves, we are training our mind to stay equanimous and not to react to anything that happens within us. So even though this is a very simple practice, it's very, very profound. It confers really rich benefits for us and helps us kind of sustain our practice. So I will lead you into mindfulness of breath meditation, but I'll leave blocks of silence, maybe 3 to 5 minutes blocks of silence, and then I'll come back and give some brief instructions and then give you another block of silence. I do, when I listen to guided meditation by teachers, I don't like teachers to talk all the time. I want teachers to give me time to take it. So that's what I'm going to do to you. Gentle instructions, focus on the breath, under the nostril or on the belly. And then before we end, I will recite some phrases of metta. So we'll end this meditation by reciting some phrases of metta for ourselves and for all things. So let's get started. To settle yourself in your cushion in your sleep. Relax yourself. Relax your head, neck, and back. Keep them erect, but not rigid. Keep your hands comfortably placed on your sides. Allow your eyes to gently close and tune in to the feeling of the breath coming in and out of the body. Focus your attention on the sensation of the breath under the nostril or on the belly, lifting it during each in-breath and receding gently on each out-breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. Focus your attention on the breath coming in to the body and going out of the body. If you find that your mind has wandered off, gently bring it back to the breath. Try not to get carried away with the stories of your thoughts, fantasies, and emotions. Gently bring your attention back to the breath. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. Focus your attention at the tip of the nostril or on the belly, lifting it during each in breath and resetting gently on each out breath. If you find that your mind has wandered off, gently bring it back to the breath. Try not to get carried away with the stories of your thoughts, fantasies, and emotions. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. If you find that your mind has wandered off, gently bring it back to the breath. Try not to get carried away with the stories of your thoughts, fantasies, and emotions. Follow the breath as it comes in and goes out. If you find that your mind has wandered off, gently bring it back to the breath. We now come to an end of this meditation. Please stay centered for a few minutes to dedicate the merits of this practice for ourselves and for all beings. I will repeat some traditional phrases of loving kindness. In the brief period of silence that follows each phrase, please repeat them to yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. You may now open your eyes and stretch gently side to side as you bring your awareness back to this Zoom room or the actual room. So, thank you. So, I'm wondering if anyone wants to share their experience, how this meditation went for them, what, if any, insights they had while doing this practice. Okay. Hi, Margaret.
Yes, hi. Yeah. Earlier today I was meditating and I found myself drifting and being very sleepy. And I don't rest very well during the day or sleep very well during the day very much. So I went out and took a long walk and came back and did a couple things before, and I apologize, I was a little late to the group. But did a couple things and then this evening, I had a really very nice meditation. Because I think I was able to stimulate my body some, and then with your instruction, which I found very relaxing, it was very nice.
Good.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Sometimes it helps to kind of shake the body and get the body in motion
Mhm.
so that it doesn't affect the mind, when we meditate. Sometimes if the body is fidgety, if there's restlessness in the body, it manifests as distractions in our practice. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Hi, Kendall. I thought I saw your digital hand raised.
You did. It must have disappeared. Can you hear me now? All right.
Yeah.
Good. So nice to see you and see
Yeah.
everybody there. What a wonderful talk. Um, just being able to, you put together so many things. I mean, you really did talk about the journey of mindfulness. You packed a lot in there, from the Eightfold Path and the three marks of existence, and feelings, and just the reminder of the path really being to realize the unsubstantial nature of everything helped keep me awake in my sit, because as most of you know, my tendency is to drift off to sleep. So you gave enough points for me to incline the mind toward the Dhamma, and then I could sort of go over any one of those, but realizing the unsubstantial nature of everything is really the most succinct reference point for me to wake up again and be present. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you,
Nice to
Kendall. That means a lot to me. Your feedback means a lot to me. So I'm glad that I was able to help you have a focused period of meditation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
I hope there's other people in the room, even though we can't see them all.
there are hundreds of people in the room. I mean, can't even see the end, actually.
Someone else whose
Pat.
name we mentioned.
Very large hall. Yeah. Hi, James. I'm sorry. Anyone in the room wants to talk? Okay, James, can you go ahead, please?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed that talk. That's basically the basis of the whole path, and it was. I really liked how you presented it. It was very insightful, and I like the meditation. I like how I kind of like the pace. What the meditation and the pace of it. It was really good. Um, I find that my problem, you know, doing my own meditations is I think Pema Chodron um, described it when I heard talks about underlying hum.
Yes.
There's that kind of mental hum, and I feel like I need to be doing something. But yeah, that's kind of my problem when I'm doing my own meditations. But thank you for. I really appreciated the talk and the meditation.
Okay. Thank you, James. I just want to mention real quick that yes, I just took some selective kind of points, but there is so much more to mindfulness practice, so much more to Satipatthana than just five aggregates, three marks of existence, etc. Right? I mean, I didn't even focus on what is called as the dependent origination, you know, seven factors of enlightenment. There's so much. It's difficult to pack everything in one lecture. But I just tried to give you a brief um, overall experience of mindfulness journey, especially if it's taken from the Buddhist path and not the secular path. Thank you. So yeah.
Thank you for the talk and the practice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciated the repetitive practice of the practice, which by that I mean being in meditation and having multiple opportunities to catch myself drifting. And I think it was a little more subtle this time. And I thought it was insightful because sometimes it was almost like rather than just being aware of, oh, I'm, off. It was like a tiny little bubble that I could see. And then it kind of broke the surface of, oh yeah, I am not meditating right now.
Yeah.
So I could see it a little earlier, maybe.
Oh, nice.
But the mind goes so quickly sometimes, right? But if you can catch it in motion sometimes, I think those are helpful moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I want to say, I like was thinking that I anticipated that I was going to be, exhausted by this time. Um, since had a full intensive day and in this sit coming out, I felt so rejuvenated and it's like my batteries are charged and we only sat for what 30-40 minutes and I'm still in awe like oh my god this is how it's like for just a day of feeling completely depleted but then like just I'm restored again. I'm brand new. I didn't need a whole night's sleep because when I was coming into the room earlier, I said that if anyone asked me, what would you like to do right now while you're setting up? I just want to sleep. And so just like, in touch with the miracle of the practice
Yes.
and how it can restore me in such a short period of time. And I just also appreciate the space that you gave, like just that silence, that space in itself is so nourishing. And those very light reminder, come back, and it was just like enough for me to make my way back, but like enough space, right? That lightness. And your talk was so wonderful. It was so nourishing. It just brought so much joy. And I know that also, like, set me off in the right direction with the practice afterwards. So it kind of like primed and prepped the meditation. So thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Trina. Coming from you, I'm overjoyed to hear your feedback. I just want to let you know that sometimes efforting creates energy. When we feel that we are tired, sometimes if we do some focused effort, we just get an inrush of energy. So this mindfulness of breath was an effort, right? You kind of focused your mind, and that focus created its own energy, and it kind of so you were feeling kind of refreshed. So
And what I thought was so great too, it's such a subtle effort, like James had mentioned about the whole doing part of like our life. And it's such a subtle effort that can like I can only touch into in a formal meditation practice, and then it helps me to then transition it into the informal practice. So it's the subtlety of the effort in itself, is I feel like that's the quality that's needed to um uh achieve that sense of restoration. Yeah, and feel recharged. So
awesome.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for saying
Thank
that.
you. All right. So just wondering, do you want to take over? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
I came to Sangha tonight very hungry.
Hungry for what?
Well,
I'm sorry.
for Dharma.
Okay.
I was hungry literally for food as well, but that faded.
Okay.
Your talk has been very, very nourishing for me.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Honestly, from beginning to end. And the meditation was just fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't get caught in too many mental formations, but one I did was a greater awareness that through my practice and through practicing with friends in Sangha, others here online as well, I faced some challenges recently that I look at it this way: life before practice and life in practice. Okay, my previous life, these challenges would have been very difficult and just had me completely frazzled. But through my practice, and this is what's weird, I looked at these like, these should be difficult. I should be just nuts with this. But my body calmed my mind. And I said, no, I'm not nuts with this. It just is what it is. So I took on the challenges. I worked through them. Some around me I was working with were losing their heads. I didn't at all. So I had a more of a graceful overview while things were happening and moved through it smoothly. And I owe that to the practice.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah.
And thank you for really drilling down tonight. You
Okay.
gave a lot of good meat.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpesh.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. You know, when you say I gave you enough meat, I hope you mean plant-based meat, not meat. Like,
I think Alpesh is going to be thinking about tofu. I didn't have it close to my face.
yeah.
Thank you. I wish I had heard more of your talk because it sounds like it was great. I had a Dharma lesson about water on the way here, rain. Started pouring really intensely, which honestly was fun. But I have some reflections and then a question. So the last 2 weeks have been very challenging at work. I'm a school counselor, and sometimes the work is really emotional and taxing and sitting with really, really intense stuff. And that's very much been the case the last 2 weeks, and I'm fried. I'm really tired. And what I noticed through the last few days is that now some interpersonal stuff is coming up between me and my colleagues. And I was able to notice it and say, okay, I don't trust this. I don't trust my thoughts around this too much. I'm not going to take them too seriously. I'm going to try to not let them spin and say, okay, like, I know I feel anxious. I know things aren't the way I want them to be. So I'm trying to kind of control them through my relationships with colleagues. So I've been trying to do that and pretty successfully, which has been good and definitely a result of the practice. And then my question, and then I'm going to say a few more things, but then I would like you to answer the question. My question is, in the talk, you said something about challenges are an opportunity to bring us back to the present.
Yes.
And it was funny you said that, because earlier this morning I was thinking about a time Trina said that a few months ago. And that was, so that feels like something that I could tap into. So my question is, again, gonna say a few more things, but my question is if you could expand on that and maybe give a story or something.
Sure.
And then tonight, the sit for me was mostly just this, kind of just like that, not spiraling too much, but kind of just no deep insights or settling. I was experimenting with, I started doing EMDR, if you all know that, and it's all kind of based on bilateral movements and our different hemispheres of our brain talking to each other so that we're able to like calm and process more. Yeah. So I experimented with that. So I was tapping like different parts of my body throughout, because the breath typically is pretty challenging for me to focus on. And when I'm having a hard time focusing anyway, I was like, that's feeble attempt. So played with that, and that was interesting. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, so I'll answer your question. So the whole Buddhist path is about leveraging suffering. So if you look at the Four Noble Truths, right? The first noble truth is there is suffering. And Buddha starts out by saying that there is suffering, right? But the path is not about suffering. The path is about bringing an end to the suffering. If we were not suffering, right, maybe we might not have the urge to understand why or if we are suffering. And if so, what do we need to go? What do we need to do to get out of it? See what I'm saying? So, a lot of people who are on this path, they've had a lot of suffering. I mean, I've had I've had very, very traumatic childhood. I'm still processing, I'm still healing from all of it, right? But for me, suffering is very real. I can relate to people suffering. But at the same time, I can also see the sheer amount of relief that I can get by this practice. Is what I'm saying? So for me, this teaching is very, very real, right? Because the suffering, to some extent, we all suffer, right? I mean, it's all about degrees, right? But anyone who has had an experience of suffering will be able to relate to this entire path. Oh, there is suffering, and what do you need to get out of suffering? Not to get out of all suffering. So what Trina said, what I said earlier, is that the whole path, there are many, many practices within the path that help us wake up when we suffer, because suffering of any kind is intense. But we can train our mind to wake up when we are suffering. You see, and can um, that can provide its own benefits, because we suffer a whole lot more than we are at peace within ourselves. You see what I'm saying? So it's all about finding opportunities to practice. Does that help? Yeah. And then it's not just our suffering, but when we see other people suffering, we're able to empathize with it. So we are able to be more compassionate with other people, because we can sense what they're going through, right? Because we have gone through it ourselves. And so that allows us to be more compassionate. That allows us to cultivate more of that compassion energy. And at the same time, when we see somebody happy, we know how precious that happiness or joy. When we see someone happy or joy, we know that how precious that emotion is, because we haven't had a whole lot ourselves. So it's very easy for us to have that empathic joy. May your good fortune continue to increase. May you stay happy. May you stay joyful forever. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, suffering makes us humble. Suffering also makes us wake up to everything that's happening around us. So thank God for suffering to some extent, to some extent. I mean, when I look back at my life, with all the suffering, that suffering actually prompted me to get on the path, So when I look at my life, I think that half of that suffering helped me to stay on the path, to get on the path. The other half just sucks. That sucks, I mean, what to do?
Okay, yeah, I think that's kind of what I was going to ask about, and I think you just kind of answered it. Like sometimes it just sucks, but because sometimes it does make me up, and other times I feel like I kind of just not drown in it, but it's just kind of there. And sometimes I'll use the practice to avoid it, and that's not waking me up, right? So
yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay. So it's 6:25. Trina, you want to take over and talk about dana? Thank you.
Yes. So just in closing, thank you everyone for showing up to practice in community. Your presence and your practice really supports the space that we have, the container that we have. This is to me what it means for us to take refuge in Sangha, is that we take refuge in what we know is really beneficial to progress that we want to make on the path. So when we practice together, we cultivate this collective energy of mindfulness, and we're really grateful for Alpesh for being here and for offering the Dharma. And I want to say that thank you to Alpesh's generosity for taking the time out of his day, his life, his busy schedule to be with us, to offer the Dharma with the kindness of his heart and the love that he has. We at Pacific Northwest Meditation, we are volunteer based. So everything we do is on volunteer base. So I'd like to invite you to support our cause and support the continuation of this practice in community by making a donation. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and you can do that by sending a Zelle payment to pnwmcommunity@gmail.com. You can also find that on the website. And if you'd like to make a donation to Alpesh, our teacher today, how can they do that? Okay, so that you could send it to PNWM and then just put in Alpesh's name, or just Al is fine too, and we'll send it to Alpesh. And one of the ways in which a couple of things that we do with the donation is, one is to support the rent. So we rent out the space at Friends Meeting House. And then the other is to support bringing in teachers that are from other places. Like we've brought teachers from Seattle, from Eugene, and other areas. And we would like to be able to continue to offer the Dharma in its purest essence. And like to what Alpesh says, there's a lot of teachings out there, and we're really committed to the purity of the teachings of the Dharma and all of its facets and all of the traditions that this teaching comes in. And so we're committed to, rotations of teachers, and to provide opportunities for you, for our Sangha, for the community to be able to hear the Dharma in many different voices and through many different experiences. And so if you have a suggestion or a connection to teachers that you know that you'd like to have us invite and bring here, you can send us an email to pnwcommunity@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear your suggestions, and also how we can improve and how can we grow our community, and how can we continue to have this beautiful space to practice and to reflect and to cultivate the awakening together. So with that, thank you, everyone. And for those of you here in the room, if you'd like to stay, we will go into the cafeteria and have a social hour. There's some snacks here. And for those on Zoom, regrettably, I wish you could join us, but it's wonderful to see you and to know that you're there. And gosh, it's just so fantastic. And Jai, I hope you're recovering well with your health. And I wish everyone a wonderful night. And please stay tuned. We have Say, John.
Nice hat.
That's a really cool hat. And we'll next week I'll be teaching the following week Kendo, and much more to come. And so we hope to bring in more teachers at the end of the year. And the talks, like the talk for today, if you've missed part of the talk, or the teachers of the past, we had Nellie, who shared reflective meditation from her book the last 2 weeks. You can check that out on YouTube. Again, that you can find that through pnwmeditation.org, or you can go onto the YouTube channel. Right now it's under Wake Up Together Now YouTube channel. Yes, we're working on expanding and growing our base, And thank you all for your contribution and your presence and your practice. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Martha, did you want to say something?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I was
Okay.
quiet, but I was here.
Thank you.
Yes,
Oh, hi,
Jai.
Jay. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, Jai. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jane. Bye,
Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
I tried to put the QR codes in the chat box, but I realized that I only sent them to Pacific Northwest Meditation and not to everyone. So at the last minute, I got the Zelle one to everyone. So anyway, great
Thank
to see you.
Good to
Bye-bye.
see you too. Bye-bye.
Have fun munching.
We will.
Hi, Jason. Good to see you. Hi, Jordan.